What? Hello? I'm not going to try talking with the pipe in my mouth the whole way through, because...
And it doesn't taste very nice because they're second hand.
This is someone else's pipe. Okay, so obviously, like everyone else, we've not really got that much time, so we're going to cram through a lot of stuff and hopefully show a bit of the game at the end, if we get time. But we're going to have the machine around today, so if people are interested afterwards, come and grab us, and we'll show you some of the actual game itself. So this is our company. This is the people, basically the core of the company. We've got very official titles, that's the proper photograph of us as well, obviously. This is our organisational structure. We use the feudal system, but we've run out of serfs at the minute. They've all got some sort of disease. This is our advanced games design document, which features an appointment for a haircut for me in it, which is good. So what we're going to talk about is why we're using procedural technology to create the game that we're making. And there's a bunch of different reasons for that, so I'm going to quickly go through some of them and explain why. I'm a kind of coder, that's sort of my background, and if I do art, it looks like that. Which it isn't that hot, really, to be honest, and sometimes I'm doing something and I can't get hold of anyone to do nice graphics. So I end up using code to make the graphics instead, because I can code. So if I get code to make graphics, then I will do that, because it essentially means I can get on with shit without having to worry about getting hold of all the sort of luscious visual kind of stuff off someone else. So that's just sort of led me personally onto using procedural content, and it's something that we use a lot in Big Robot making Sir. There's a bunch of reasons why it's useful in a lot of different ways, and I think these are particularly relevant to smaller developers or indie developers, because we just don't have the resources a lot of people have. But that doesn't necessarily stop us having the kind of ambitions and the kind of, I guess, the sort of the scope or vision of what we want to do. It's quite hard sometimes to kind of keep that small, even though you really should. And so procedural content generation allows us to sort of get away with trying to be a bit more ambitious and using technology to kind of solve problems. So it allows us to do stuff like, I don't have to spend every day placing every single brick or petal in a world. I can get the code to do that for me. We can have permutations, so we can have many different versions of the same sort of game, and each time there's a slight difference. So it means there's a great deal of replayability to it. It means it's automated. There's a kind of depth in terms of the numbers of kind of emergent events that you can get. The other thing's nice is it's not a perfect program, so it's not like you play it once and there's one solution and you've got it. Or even within a single game, it's not like there's one way ever to do something. There's always a lot of different options that you can kind of play through. This does, of course, mean that some games might be actually easier than others, but that's fine, that's okay. It offers you the different experiences. It also offers you that novelty and surprise that you might not get if you were hand designing everything. I'll probably mention later some of the kind of, I guess they're not really mistakes, but they kind of are bugs that have occurred in the game. But some of them, we actually want to embrace. We're like, hey, that looks pretty cool. We didn't expect that to work like that, but it's an interesting thing. And you could find that just even when you're playing through the game, there'll be little areas that have been generated in quite an unusual way. And that's quite nice. The other reason I like it from a programming point of view is that it kind of shows a bit more of the process of how games are made, or it's sort of, you can see a little bit of the code itself in action. So you can kind of look at the world, and every time you play, you can think, oh, so that's how it's doing it, and I'd only get these items in this particular area, and so on. So it kind of lets you into a little bit of the system by allowing the system to constantly be sort of replayed and rerun. Another thing that's really nice about it is that it gives players a sort of sense of ownership. It's like, this is my world, I've generated it, it's mine, it's something that's sort of unique to me. And at the same time, there's a kind of collaboration between the designers, us, and the player, because we give them access to change various aspects about how the world is made, so they can kind of tailor-make it in a sense. So it's almost like a collaborative thing. We say, here's the tools to sort of make your world and your game. You can choose how you want to do that. Now, obviously, we have to kind of put some limitations on that, otherwise people will be making worlds that were just full of water towers and nothing else. Which might look kind of cool, but would be hideously broken in terms of gameplay. So it's a kind of like collaboration and a push and pull. The other thing that's nice about it is you get this kind of panning for gold mentality when you're playing it, that somewhere in the world there is an axe, there's some traps, there is a map, there is some kind of kick-ass objects that you want to get hold of. And you begin to learn the kind of, I guess, the distribution of those things. And so you're kind of searching, it's almost like you're panning for gold, trying to find those kind of events and those items. Okay, so onto the game. I'm going to do a little bit of technical stuff, just because I thought there'll be people here who might be interested to see it from that point of view, because it's easy to say procedural content generation and people go, yeah, great, but what actually are you doing? So, we wanted to make an open world survival FPS game, and that's something that's pretty ambitious for essentially just 3 people, who aren't all full-time either. So, we realised we couldn't really do this without using procedural content generation. Some programming maths terms, blah blah blah. Veroni diagrams, look at that, that's nice, isn't it? That's some maths, makes a nice pattern. But we kind of looked at this and thought, we want to make a game like the English countryside. Ooh, look, it looks a little bit like fields. Let's mess around with it a little bit more, and then we can use it to actually generate fields. So we took like a number of different traditional procedural content techniques to create an island, and then we used these Voronoi diagrams to kind of partition the island up into things that looked a bit like English fields. And then we went a bit further on that. We were like, okay, so that's it forced into a hex grid, just for fun. So once we've made the island, we can kind of mix and match the different procedural kind of methods to give it like beaches by the coast and rocks at higher altitudes and so on. Mix and match those things together, kind of blur them around a bit to give it an organic sort of feel. And then you end up with something that looks a little bit like this. So this is an overview of the island with a lot of the objects highlighted. And you can see that there's all these different shapes that are different regions in the islands, and some of them have got trees in, some of them have got rocks in, some of them are villages. And all those regions add to the kind of dynamic variety of the world itself, and the kind of events and, I guess, gameplay that can happen within them. I'm going to really quickly look at the village region here. So this is an example of how I do one region. So this is the simple village. So it starts off by taking a region that's has to be a reasonable size. It plants an object in the middle of it, and then it defines a number of roads. It makes sure those roads don't go too close to each other, otherwise you end up with people's back gardens inside other people's houses, which isn't good. So stick an object in the middle of it, then it steps out along the roads on either side, and it places houses along those roads. You can even see there's a bit of an arrow here. I could use the pipe now. Where those houses are slightly intersecting. So we're still kind of sort of tweaking this system to try and get rid of at least some of those. Then it goes on to sort of placing objects in the back gardens behind the houses, so there's a little walls and fences and so on. Then there's a bunch of stuff that actually goes in the gardens themselves, like bushes, trees, benches, chairs, broken objects and so on. And then all of those objects together sort of constitute the village itself. So it's just a sort of a way of iterating on something that's quite simple, and then just sort of building into it a depth of variety and possibility that means that what you'll end up with is something that does look kind of nice. So that's the isometric view, and then this is some of the images of what it might look like actually within the gameplay. So we've got a bunch of regions. Yeah, we've got like a bunch of different region types. Ranging from really simple things, just like beaches that only have a bit of driftwood and rocks in them, to villages which are a lot more complex. And we're adding more of those all the time. The current sort of state of that is that we're able to sort of define thematically different islands. We might have a mountainous island that's more like to have pine trees on it, or a fen-like island that's at a low level, it's got lots of watery kind of areas and so on. And that gives us the sort of ability to create thematically sets of different region types and so on. And it's really nice because you can basically just sit there and tweak with these values all day. I mean, I'm not going to say this is like a magic solution that you just have to write this and it takes you half a day and then you hit go and brilliant. It's like you have to spend a lot of time kind of tweaking and fine-tuning the system and making sure this model doesn't work and that model doesn't work. And James will like Skype me up every day and go, oh, you've got a house in a tree today, Tom, or like you know, there's walls growing horizontally out of cliffs and things like that.
Trying to find a system that's flexible enough for people to be able to play with it themselves, and then but not so flexible that you can break it as a player. So you've still got some flexibility to create your own world, but not so much that it breaks the whole system. So.
Yes, right. So yeah, you get these nice environments that are generated, and then we get obviously these kind of issues. So we've had things like there's been terrain objects floating in the air. We've had, as part of the world being generated, it also generates ambient wildlife. So there's trees, which James designed actually, that we had a problem with a while ago because they were constantly emitting birds.
So the plan with birds was that they'd be an indicator for the player to know if there was movement in the world, because it's a completely open world. So if you've got enemies moving around, you want to be able to spot where they are in the landscape without necessarily being able to see them. So if they walk through a field that's got trees in it, they get close enough to disturb the birds would fly off, you'd see the birds, you know where they are. The trouble was the birds also made noise themselves, which then scared other birds, and so you had like a Mexican wave of birds going across the island and waking each other up, which was quite good. Similar thing to that, sorry, shall I go? Yeah. Was the dogs doing the same? We had dogs that would listen for noise and then go and investigate. So they go and find the owners. So each dog when it spawns, assigns itself an owner in the collection of NPCs and heads for that owner. But we forgot to exclude dogs from that. So dogs were assigning other dogs as their owners and then going to them. And then they'd end up as a big pack of them up in the mountains somewhere, hiding from everybody, being quite happily on their own, forming little dog packs rather than going off and hunting people, which was the plan.
Yeah, so you get quite a lot of these interesting things. The dog patch was great, and I would quite like to leave them there. I had this romantic vision of these dogs like up in the hills on their own, didn't give a shit about you, just hanging out. And you also have these really nice, I forgot what the Disney film is, the one where the dogs come home from like thousands of miles. Occasionally you get that where a dog's owner would be like completely across the other side of the island, and you'd be standing on a hill and watch this dog in the distance running really fast trying to get home to its owner, and if you were in the way it would come up to you, like savage you violently and then just carry on.
Going back to their owners,
yeah.
So they don't just stay on all the time. So if their owner's miles away, they just stop briefly to attack you and then carry on their journey.
So we had all kinds of issues, you know, we've had bugs like that, and this is what makes it really fun as well. We've had underwater villages on vertical cliffs. We even had an issue a few weeks back where if you put a gun that you were carrying inside a house, you could carry on shooting it while it was in the house.
Because you can stash that.
So, yeah, there you go, that's an example of some flying hedgerows that I had there. That didn't work out particularly well. That's a village that's sort of submerged. So, what's the time? Should we show a bit? Maybe we should show a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit about the sort of AI system and so on. So, right. So in the world, there's a number of, well, it depends how you set it up really, but generally you'll find these villages. We've got a number of different villages. This is kind of one style. We've got kind of industrial villages, and there's other areas where you can find resources and items. So all the houses are, as you saw earlier, they're all dropped in the world, and then they have loot that's also procedurally generated in them. So if you go up to one of the houses, you can check out what's in the doors. You can drag stuff into your inventory and make use of various different types of resources. So you can eat to replenish your vitality. You can find bandages to stop you from bleeding to death. It's quite a bleak game, actually. Whenever Jim tends to post anything about it, it's like, this is brilliant, I'm bleeding to death in a ditch. I'm like, hey, yeah, this is the sort of game you like, you know. So like, it's pitch dark and there's things shooting me, I'm just dying. There will be kind of difficulty settings, so people will be allowed to kind of edit those sort of different aspects. There you go, there's some birds flying away from the trees. There's, 2 minutes, yeah, okay. So, yeah, there's a lot of kind of emergent stuff in there. Even the NPCs don't really have any kind of scripted behaviour. They wander around in troops around the islands, and then certain NPCs don't actually like each other either. So they're highly likely to get into fights with each other, which you can use to your advantage to try and, you know, get around and to get to some sort of location where you need. Oh, there's a little wisp there, the guy in the forest. Sometimes they help you, and sometimes they'll just lead you over a cliff. So you've got to be careful. Okay, well, thanks very much. I think we're out of time. If you want to grab me or James, it shouldn't be too hard to spot us.
Yeah,
if you want to come up and have a play. Yeah, so thanks for listening. Toodle pip.